Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight. I'm Paris Schutz. Brandis Friedman has the evening off. On the show tonight, City Council members are set to vote this Wednesday, but not with the usual pen and paper. Details on City Hall's new multi-million-dollar electronic voting system.
During this hearing, I hope that you will see how much I love our country.
The Senate begins historic hearings for President Biden's Supreme Court nominee. What's ahead as Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson prepares to face tough questions from lawmakers.
It's not just a one-off situation.
Electronic monitoring is used to track your location, but what happens when the technology gets it wrong? Carol Marine has the details. And we would like to acknowledge that the technicians who work on this program are currently on strike. Please be assured that in the coming days, we'll honor our commitment to the community to cover the issues that are important to you. And now to some of today's top stories. Confirmation hearings begin for President Joe Biden's Supreme Court pick, Ketanji Brown Jackson. A number of Republican senators previewed their line of questioning, which included praise from Democrats and statements from Republicans insinuating that Jackson might be soft on crime. Illinois U.S. Senator Dick Durbin, who chairs the Senate Judiciary Committee, dismissed those claims.
I don't think there's any credibility to it. How could this woman possibly have the endorsement of the International Association of Chiefs of Police and the Fraternal Order of Police and be soft on crime? She's balanced, and her record shows it, and she has 573 written opinions to prove it.
If confirmed, Jackson would be the first black woman to ever serve on the nation's highest court. Meanwhile, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas remains hospitalized after being admitted on Friday night in Washington, D.C. with flu-like symptoms. According to a Supreme Court spokesperson, Thomas does not have COVID-19, is being treated for an infection with antibiotics, and is expected to be released from the hospital in the next couple of days. And we'll have much more on Jackson's confirmation hearing coming up shortly. Well, it'll be an early start for Chicago Public Schools. Assuming the Chicago Board of Education approves the CPS proposed calendar on Wednesday, CPS students will be back in the classroom on August 22nd. Historically, schools have normally started the new school year immediately after Labor Day. School is scheduled to end this year, June 14th, although CPS has yet to say whether it will add days to make up for the 5 lost to strike action by the Chicago Teachers Union in January. Mayor Lori Lightfoot says the city's economy has bounced back from the devastating impact of the COVID-19 pandemic.
We are back. The level of enthusiasm, the thousands and tens of thousands of people who came back downtown, our restaurants, our bars, I'm hearing from owners everywhere that they had better years than they had even anticipated, and in some instances, better than pre-pandemic.
Lightfoot was speaking at a news conference at O'Hare International Airport to promote a new marketing campaign called, quote, What We're Made Of, aimed at attracting more tourists to the city. The mayor noted that traveler numbers at O'Hare have come roaring back with a 124% increase in passengers in December 2021 compared to December 2020. Midway Airport saw a 57% increase in passengers. And up next, a new era of voting for Chicago's City Council members. We explain right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
For decades now, votes by the Chicago City Council have been tallied the old-fashioned way with pen and paper. But starting this Wednesday, that method will be a relic of the past as City Clerk Anna Valencia fires up a new electronic voting system. WTTW News reporter Heather Sharon joins us now with more details. Hey, Heather, so describe how this new electronic voting system is going to work.
Well, each alderperson has their very own tablet equipped with the touchscreen, and when the vote is opened by City Clerk Ana Valencia or whoever is operating as the clerk, they will be able to simply tap a green yes or a red no and cast their vote that way. It is a far cry from what they have been doing for decades, as you and I well know, calling out each alderperson by name, one by one, and then having them respond yay or nay. That is so 19th century.
I do love those bellowing yay or nay. So does that mean we're never going to hear that again?
So older people will be able to request a voice vote, and if the presiding officer, usually Mayor Lori Lightfoot, agrees, they can have one. But this system is designed to be a more effective and easier way to tally the vote, because sometimes it's impossible to tell, what alderman has voted no. And there have been so many close votes and procedural hijinks. Ana Valencia says this will make it much easier for people to keep track of how their alderperson votes or doesn't vote.
And we only have a few seconds, Heather. This is a $3.5 million price tag. What's the benefit to the public here?
Well, hopefully more transparency, easier to get information, and more accountability. People should be able to look up easily how their alderperson voted and fire off an email full of praise or approbation.
All right, Heather, it's a brave new world there in City Council. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Paris.
And you can read Heather's full story on our website. That's at WTTW.com/news. And up next, a historic Supreme Court confirmation hearing is underway. Local analysis right after this.
Certainly we can celebrate, but we also have to recognize what so many people have gone through because of racism and what people continue to go through.
I think that Americans are finally beginning to embrace that we are African, we are indigenous, we are European, we are Asian, we are everything.
Appellate Court Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson is President Biden's pick to replace Stephen Breyer on the U.S. Supreme Court. Senate confirmation hearings for Jackson began today with opening statements on both sides of the aisle and from Jackson herself, who alluded to the historic nature of her nomination.
I stand on the shoulders of so many who have come before me, including Judge Constance Baker Motley, who was the first African-American woman to be appointed to the federal bench and with whom I share a birthday. And like Judge Motley, I have dedicated my career to ensuring that the words engraved on the front of the Supreme Court building, "Equal justice under law," are a reality and not just an ideal.
And joining us now to talk about the hearings are Kalia Coleman, the former president of the Black Women Lawyers Association of Greater Chicago, Amanda Savage, an associate political science professor at Loyola University Chicago, and Audra Wilson, president and CEO of the Shriver Center on Poverty Law. Welcome all of you to Chicago tonight. Amanda, these hearings usually contain a lot of pontificating from senators and innocuous answers from the nominee like, quote, "I plan to call the balls and strikes." Is that what you anticipate in the coming days?
Yes, absolutely. Nominees are expected to not give straight answers. That's kind of been the tradition for the last 30 years. This nominee in particular will be very careful about a lot of the politically divisive issues that the senators are going to ask about, not only because it's tradition, but because the court is hearing a lot of those issues right now. So the court has pending cases on abortion, it has pending cases on immigration law, on gerrymandering, a lot of the issues that senators might want to focus on in the abstract. Judge Jackson has a very strong case for not answering because they're before the court as we speak.
Right, lots of issues before the court. And Audra, one of the things that Republicans have brought up is Judge Jackson's background as a public defender. Do you anticipate lots of questioning along those lines?
Possibly, yes. The fact of the matter is that if you're looking at the number of public defenders that have been nominated for federal judges, I read a statistic that said 318 as of April 2021, 318 former prosecutors were sitting as federal judges, which is over 1/3 of the 880 across the country. And then conversely, the smallest fraction of those who became federal judges, and let alone to the Supreme Court, were former criminal defense attorneys and former public defenders, who only accounted for about 7% of all judges. There has been historically a bias towards prosecutors. And interestingly, prosecutors are not subjected to the same sort of scrutiny as public defenders, nor are corporate attorneys as far as their impartiality. But public defenders have always been scrutinized much more harshly, and there's no reason to think that her record is not going to be dissected as a public defender.
And Democrats have pointed to this as a positive, talking about the breadth of her experience today. Vermont Senator Patrick Leahy said that she would, quote, have a mastery of our justice system. Take a listen.
Judge Jackson's nomination, of course, is historic in more ways than one. Her nomination, pending a confirmation by the Senate, will bring us one step closer to having a Supreme Court that is more reflective of our nation. One where diversity of race and gender, background, education, and experience allow all Americans to look to their court and see in its justices a reflection of the American people.
Kalia, do you look at this diversity of background experience as an asset or a hindrance as we go through these hearings?
I absolutely believe that the diversity of experience is an asset. In the 233-year history, we have never had a Black woman on the United States Supreme Court. You know, this is a land where our creed is that there's equal opportunity, equal justice for everyone. And it's hard to imagine that you have the highest court of the land that is missing a very, very, very important voice, and that is the voice of the Black woman, the minority woman. Judge Jackson's experience as a Black woman, her experience as a former federal defender, her unique understanding of the criminal justice system and how Black and brown people are adversely affected and impacted in a very unique way in the criminal justice system is a voice that needs to be present on the Supreme Court. Oftentimes, the Supreme Court, highest court in the land, they deal with issues affecting the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment. And when those issues get to the Supreme Court, they're in that gray area where you need those diverse perspectives, someone who fundamentally understands and can see issues and add a unique voice to the conversation in order to ensure that as decisions are being made, precedent that is set that will have longstanding impact, that as part of that deliberation, that every voice was actually uniquely captured and heard. So I definitely think that her diverse experience will be an absolute asset to the court.
And Amanda Savage, we brought up the politics at play in these hearings. Both parties tend to play to their respective political bases. So how does that affect the strategies that you expect Democrats and Republicans to employ in their questioning?
Well, I think the Democrats' job is pretty easy, both because Judge Jackson's nomination is historic and she's got these stellar credentials and she's a very easy sell on why she should be a Supreme Court justice, and they have the votes. And so at the end of the day, it's exceedingly unlikely that Judge Jackson is not confirmed to the U.S. Supreme Court. Republicans' job is going to be much harder because she's such a stellar nominee and she'll be hard to attack. So what we saw Republicans do today is not make arguments against Judge Jackson or her record, but instead they made process arguments. They hearkened back to Judge Kavanaugh's confirmation hearings and the objections that Democrats were making to Justice Barrett's confirmation hearings of the senators were so focused on process and so unfair to the nominee. And I think that that indicates that they're trying to give themselves cover in the coming days to make arguments against Judge Jackson along the lines of what their political base wants to hear, and along the lines of what they can talk about given her record, which is that she's soft on crime, which I think we're going to see as like a central focus of Republicans in the midterms. And I think that this all has to be contextualized in the fact that there's an election coming up soon. And so Republicans are going to try to attack her on being a public defender, for example.
Certainly a lot of politics at play. And Audra Wilson, aside from her background, when you look at her judicial rulings, do you get a sense of an overarching judicial philosophy?
I mean, yes, I mean, this has been scrutinized a lot about her philosophy, and you could certainly pick that apart too. I mean, I think, but what you see in her decisions over and over is just, it's the perspective that she's bringing. It's the difference in perspective and experience that's reflected that has been missing, quite frankly, by not having this sort of person on the Supreme Court. And so I think this is going to be probably the most significant thing. It's important to note that she is probably one of the most scrutinized individuals in the legal profession. So before she was nominated to the Supreme Court, She had 3 confirmations to the Sentencing Commission, second time when she was nominated for a trial judgeship, a third time when she was nominated to her current judge as the federal appellate judge. So this, quite frankly, is something to what you had just mentioned before. It's going to be revolutionary, quite frankly, in watching this nomination, in the sense that having the first public defender that's going to be sitting on the Supreme Court is going to be the blueprint for how future nominations go when there are others who are coming from the non-traditional prosecutor or corporate backgrounds to ascend to the Supreme Court. So it's going to be historic in so many ways.
All right, and we will follow these historic hearings all week. And our thanks to Kalia Coleman, Amanda Savage, and Audra Wilson. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And up next, what happens when electronic monitoring technology sends the wrong location? Carol Marine joins us with more on that. But first, we take a look at the weather. Electronic monitoring has long been controversial. It's when someone accused of a crime is allowed to stay out of jail until trial, as long as they wear a GPS ankle bracelet that tracks their movement. We've all heard stories about people committing new crimes while out on EM. This is not that story. Instead, what if the person is exactly where he or she is supposed to be, but the electronic monitoring device gets it wrong? Carol Marine and students from DePaul University's Center for Journalism, Integrity, and Excellence have been investigating, and Carol joins us now with more. Carol.
Paris, that's exactly what happened to Michael Matthews. But as we prepared to report this story out, things began to change for him in a big way. It was back in December that he was put into Cook County Jail for allegedly violating his electronic monitoring. But last week in court, a Cook County State's attorney did an about-face, and he was released. The question tonight is, if it could happen to him, could it happen to others?
Let me just cut to the chase here, Mr. Matthews. Have you ever violated the terms of your electronic monitor?
Never, not one time.
Since December, 44-year-old Michael Matthews has been locked up in the Cook County Jail. But his attorney, Tracy Harkin, says she has data and video recordings which show he never violated the terms of his release.
The circumstances support our position that Michael never left the house.
Michael Matthews is charged, along with 2 others, with murder in connection with a March 2019 shooting outside a River North nightclub. He entered a plea of not guilty and was placed on electronic monitoring. But in December, after authorities claimed he left the house in which he was staying without permission, he was put back behind bars.
The sheriff typically alleges that Michael has left the house for about 5 to 8 minute periods and gone to a series of addresses.
Could he physically have done that?
No.
Welcome to the Cook County Sheriff's Office Electronic Monitoring Program.
The Office of Sheriff Tom Dart administers the program.
The bracelet device attaches to your ankle and is in constant contact with the Sheriff's Office via GPS and cellular towers.
Here is part of what Sheriff Dart said during a recent Facebook Live event.
There's occasional anomalies, not too often. And then when there is a movement that they're not supposed to do, we contact people, see if there's a reasonable explanation. If not, then we send cars over there and the like.
It's definitely something that we've seen, that I've seen personally a number of times.
According to the Cook County Public Defender's Office, there are more than occasional anomalies. Assistant Public Defender Radiance Ward says Matthews' experience is not an isolated one.
I've had conversation with colleagues about it with their cases. So it is something that happens. It is something that that happens enough where we need to address it, and it's not just a one-off situation.
Since January of 2021, Matthews was staying in the basement of his brother's house in Hazel Crest, where he and his brother Walter began documenting his whereabouts at all times.
We decided to get a camera and put a camera in the basement to monitor, to make sure that any event that they call again saying that he wasn't home, that he'd be able to prove that he wasn't.
These are among the videos they say prove he was home at the time of some of the alleged violations.
I laid on a recliner chair in front of this camera 24 hours a day. The only time that I left from in front of the camera is to take a shower and use the washroom.
According to records from the sheriff's office, there were GPS notifications that he violated his electronic monitoring 15 times since September. His lawyer says this and other videos of him in the basement dispute that.
You have evidence of 7. So if I'm the prosecutor, I say, but you don't have evidence on 8 of them. What do you say?
Michael did not realize until December 8, when I called him and informed him that these allegations were being made, that his security system only went back 30 days.
Those 8 other tapes, she said, were routinely erased by the security company. On a cold January Sunday morning, Harkins went door to door, asking if Michael Matthews had ever been at the addresses listed on the sheriff's report.
I explained to her, that Michael's brother lived across the street, that his brother was on EM, and that the sheriffs were claiming that this was one of the addresses that he went to at some point, and she said he's never been to that house.
There's nothing that's reliable in all instances.
Dr. David Olson is the co-director of the Center for Criminal Justice Research, Policy, and Practice at Loyola University.
So I think everybody's experience when they pull up the map on their phone and want to find where they're at, depending on where they're at, it may not show a precise location, but it'll give you kind of a large circle that you're somewhere within this area.
For instance, he says, problems can occur with GPS monitoring in areas of skyscrapers, parking garages, and basements. Those areas, agrees another expert, Jordan Bolger, are problematic. Bolger oversees a separate electronic monitoring system for Timothy Evans, the chief judge of the Circuit Court of Cook County.
The analogy I use is if you're ever trying to get directions when you're coming out of the grocery store or the shopping mall and you're parked in a parking garage or an underground structure, the map is going to have no idea where you are, right?
In the end, it is a judge who makes the final determination if a defendant has violated home confinement. Cook County Judge Peggy Champas ruled in December that Matthews should be returned to county jail.
I attempted to produce the videos to Her Honor Judge Champas on December 14, 2021. The court refused to review the videos and immediately revoked Mr. Matthews' bond.
Judge Champas says a court spokesperson does not speak on pending cases. Tom Dart, who also declined our interview request, did address this issue this year in a public forum.
We get any anomalies, if we get any violations, we arrest people if need be, or if not, we take them in front of the judge for the judge to make that determination. But it's very frustrating to all of us.
Personally, I think even if it's just one client who then is subsequently returned to custody, whose children are impacted, whose jobs are impacted, I think that's too much.
So it's a really tricky balancing act that the judges have to do, maintaining public safety while also protecting the rights of the defendant.
Before the shooting at the nightclub, Michael Matthews worked for the city of Chicago. He also operated a charity using basketball as a means to keep kids out of trouble. He has never been convicted of a crime. He is married with 6 children. There will not be a lot of sympathy out in the general public for you. You face a serious charge. You're on electronic monitoring. The fact that it possibly can misfire will not engender a lot of sympathies.
I'm not looking for sympathy. I just want to get it right. I want to make sure it doesn't happen to the next person.
In court last week, the state's attorney dropped its charge that Mr. Matthews violated his electronic monitoring, and Judge Champas reluctantly approved his release. He is now on EM, but at his sister's house as he awaits his pending trial. Paris?
And Carol, have you talked to Michael Matthews since he got released from Cook County Jail?
I have. I talked to him this afternoon, Paris. He said he has since Friday been seeing family members who've come to visit him, his kids and his grandkids. And he notes he has a camera at his sister's house focused on him at all times, 24/7, to be able to prove he is exactly where he says he is. Paris?
All right, Carol, thanks to you and the students at DePaul University. And we're back to wrap things up right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
And that's our show for this Monday night. Don't forget to stay connected with us by signing up for our daily briefing. And you can get Chicago Tonight streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news. You can also get the show via podcast and the PBS video app. And please join us tomorrow night live at 7. And up next, we have Jay's Chicago. And now for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Paris Schutz. Thank you so much for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a personal injury law firm dedicated to preserving the dignity and rights of all individuals.
Next time on Antiques Roadshow, these guests are on top of the world at our stop in the White Mountains.
That's exciting.
Wow. That's a great $20 investment.
It's Antiques Roadshow, next time from the Omni Mount Washington Resort in New Hampshire.